Welcome to another You Comment, We Respond. As you may have noticed, we've gotten a little behind on these things due to kind of scheduling stuff. So we're going to do 5 hands today in this You Comment, We Respond, which means that for most of them, we're only going to do 1 comment, which also means that if you get your comment on, you're extra special today. So that's good stuff right there.
Yeah.
So the first hand we're going to talk about is WSOP Hero or WSOP Zero. You can click right up there to check that out. This is where Chris Klodnicki kind of seemed to lose his mind a little bit. In a 3-bet power, he 3-bet with ace-7 against the 9s of Matt something.
Matt Moss.
Matt Moss. The flop came out 8-9 king with 2 spades, giving Moss a set. Went check, Klodnicki bet. Moss called. The turn was another 8, giving Moss a full house. Went check, check. The river was a 5 of spades, bringing a 3rd spade. Moss bet most of Klodnicki's stack, and Klodnicki eventually called with ace high.
Interesting spot. And it did not work out, of course, for Chris Klodnicki.
No, it did not.
Tanner White says, you neglect to mention that he has horrible removal. Having the 7 of diamonds means he's not blocking 6-7, 10-7, and even something like 9-7 that might be turning into a bluff on the river. Blocking those hands is much more of a negative than blocking something like 8-7, which there's fewer combos of. A heroing range in this spot should never contain a 7.
Well, that's an interesting comment.
I like that comment. It's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. And I think beyond that comment, which we eventually came to the conclusion that we thought the call was okay.
It was at least okay.
It was at least okay. Beyond that comment, though, and beyond what we kind of got into with that, you don't necessarily have to have this in your heroing range. It's one of the worst hands you ever show up with. You can have some heroes, but maybe this shouldn't be one of them with ace-7 here.
I mean, I agree this removal thing is a great point. If we're really worried about Jack-10, like, well, we don't remove, I guess we don't block Jack-10 at all, so that's the good news, right? But we do block the other kinds of straight draws, which is problematic. We need him to have more than just Jack-10. Really, like, you know he's always going to bluff all of his combos of Jack-10.
Right.
So there's that. All right, moving on. Next hand.
Yeah, next hand.
Wow, so quick.
Yeah, because there's only 1 per hand.
Okay, well, we're going to talk about Phil Ivey has 7 high.
That's what he had during the hand.
Right.
7 high.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's exciting.
I appreciate you weighing in. Yeah. You can check that out right up here if you want to see it. This is a hand where it was limped on the button by Phil pre-flop. He opened by limping the button. It's crazy, I know. There was reasons for that we're not going to get into now. The flop was ace-ace-3. Tom Dorn had a 3 in his hand from the small blind and bet. Patrick Antonius in the big blind had queen-7 off and decided to call as a float. Phil Ivey with 7-5 on the button also calls to refloat. It was
super float.
Amazing. Yeah. Turn is another ace, a 3rd ace. Juan checks. Patrick bets. Ivey calls again because he's like, what are you going to do, Patrick? Juan folds the full house because he's like, what am I going to do here? River is a deuce. Patrick checks. Phil Ivey bets with 7 high. And Patrick thinks for a while and ultimately folds. And
Patrick kind of knows something's going on because he's like, just take it, take it, fine, take it.
So disgusting.
It's kind of a small pot, so I guess that helps him just say take it.
I guess.
Yeah.
Oliver McMillan says, what is Ivey's check back range on the river? It seems fairly narrow. Assuming he's not getting any value from a 3, he'll check a 3, a deuce, 4-5, king high, and maybe queen high. So from Antonius's perspective, queen high is the same as a 3 once Ivey bets, i.e. a bluff catcher. I think he was considering a call. This is because we were saying we thought Antonius, because he had 30K in his hand, he was actually considering raising Phil Ivey's 10K bet on the river.
Right. I still think he was considering raising because there's a lot of hands that Ivey could fold to a check raise. We ultimately concluded that the check raise wasn't going to work because Patrick would usually bet the river if he had quad aces. And that's why Patrick decided not to do it. But I think Patrick was worried about the pocket pairs. And he's not thinking necessarily that it's a good idea to call because Phil might have some of those pocket pairs due to the props and stuff that were going on.
Next up, we have Viffer versus the very wealthy guy. You can check it out by clicking here, but here's the recap. Bruce Ruffin, who is rich.
Phil Ruffin.
Phil Ruffin, close enough.
Yeah.
I'm making other things wrong too, let's be honest. He decides to limp with king 3 of clubs. Viffer's having none of that and has 9 deuce suited.
Raises to 3,200.
Indeed he does. Ruffin, of course, calls. Everyone else folds. The flop is ace, king 8. And Ruffin donks for 5,000. Viffer just calls with the 9 deuce suited. So there's something going on.
Has a setup going on.
Yeah, clearly. The turn is
4 of hearts.
4 of hearts. Thank you very much. Ruffin bets 20,000. So that's a big bet. Viffer raises. By the way, Viffer does not have hearts.
No, he has nothing.
Right. Viffer raises to 50,000. I was getting there. I was getting there. Just
trying to help a buddy out.
Stay out of my lane, buddy.
Okay.
Ruffin calls. Ruffin calls the 50K. The river is the queen of hearts, bringing the backdoor flush. Ruffin checks. Viffer bets 100,000. Ruffin calls pretty quickly.
With king 3.
Pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Second pair, no.
We thought it was a very bad play by Ruffin.
Yeah, oh, yeah. We actually liked the play by Viffer. Didn't like the play by Ruffin. Worked out great for Ruffin. Not so good for the Viff. All right. Steve Goldie says, this was a world-class play by Ruffin.
Whoa.
I didn't think he'd be ready for that. He turns his hand face up by limping pre and donk betting flop, knowing Viffer would pounce on his medium hand strength range and ultimately would become too bluff heavy in the spot. When he bets pot on the turn, he's not doing it to get value from a worse hand, but to induce a bluff. He's continuing to tell the story that he has a medium strength hand and that he wants Viffer to fold, knowing Viff will fall into the trap. The fact that he actually got a medium strength hand, which he was able to turn into a really good bluff catcher, made the play even more elite.
Okay, I feel like this guy's trolling us.
I can't tell. It might be sarcasm.
I feel like this might be sarcasm.
It has to be sarcasm.
I mean, come on. He's got king 3. This is a terrible play.
Of course it's terrible. Yeah. You can't mean this, Steve Goldie.
Yeah.
You can't.
I mean,
maybe you can.
Maybe you do mean this. And I'm sure you can find a way to figure out in your mind that this is what's going on, that Ruffin has this high-level play. But if you go back and take just a look at after the hand is over and Ruffin knows he wins, he's still counting out the call because he doesn't really know the order of operations or how things are supposed to happen. This guy doesn't have this complex plan here. This is not what's happening.
Viffer's turned his hand over. Ruffin actually says kings and continues to put the chips in as if like he's not going to get them right back. He is very much an amateur. This has got to be trolled, though, right? I wasn't 100% sure, so I thought it'd be a fun comment to do.
Next up is Vicky. Coren has air, so does the other guy. We know Vicky Coren's not a guy. It's hard to title things sometimes. It's difficult. I don't know.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
That's weak.
Okay, weak. Fine, whatever. It's weak. Anyway, click right up there to check it out. It's a hand at the final table of the IFP or some...
IFP 2011.
2011 IFP. I don't really know what that is, but it was a thing that happened.
It's a thing.
Roll Mestre opened with queen 3 suited. Vicky Coren called out of the big blind with 9-6 of clubs. The flop was ace 10 deuce. Vicky Coren check raised Mestre's bet. Mestre called with queen high.
There was one club on the flop, so Vicky at least had a backdoor flush draw?
The turn was the jack of clubs.
Hey!
Bringing that backdoor flush draw. Coren bet small on the turn, about 30K into, what, 90? Something like that. And Mestre raised to 80K, and Coren eventually found a fold with her flush draw, and Mestre got to win with queen high. It was a very strange hand.
Very unusual.
Yeah.
Israel Hines B says, Coren definitely had a plan. Her 2x flop check raise told a story that her 30K, 40% of pot, turn bet didn't convincingly reinforce. She underbet by around 20K, which amazingly got sniffed at by Mestre. It was a great plan until she lost her nerve, which is ironic since she gained equity on the flush draw.
Okay, so we don't think that was really the plan. The sizing on the turn, we think has to do with how her hand improved and wanting to be able to see the river.
Right.
I mean, you were the champion of that idea, right?
I was. I feel very strongly about that. I actually kind of love the sizing because you just don't expect to get raised very often. There's very few hands Mestre can really raise you with. It turns out queen 3 suited is in that.
I guess range, so. There is a decent amount of value. I mean, he has ace jack sets that are flopped that are slow playing, and king queen would definitely call because a big problem we had with Coren's play was that she check raised really small on the flop, so she's not even folding out the Broadway gut shots. That seemed like a big mistake.
That is the one thing that we would have preferred. If she's going to check raise, which we didn't really like the check raise on this board anyway, because there's so little she could really rep reasonably.
But that said, to that comment, I think the 30K bet actually is pretty good. It just so happens that Mestre decided to pull the trigger on it, and it's kind of unlucky.
Yeah, and honestly, if Vicky isn't so short behind, she's like 100K behind, she's a bit deeper, she's always going to call here. It's a really odd situation she's put herself into, for sure. This is her own doing. But if she just was a bit deeper, she would call no problem. But she just sort of can't call. She's getting like just about the wrong odds, and with the tournament life stuff in play too, you just can't do it.
Yep.
All right, finally.
All right.
This is bonkers.
This is bonkers.
This is bonkers.
Right now.
But so is the hand that we did called This is Bonkers. Click on it right up here. This is the craziest hand we've ever done.
It is unique to anything I've seen on televised poker. It involves an exposed hand pre-flop.
Yeah. So we have Alfredo and
Vicente.
Vicente opens with ace jack of clubs. It folds to Alfredo. Vicente turns his hand over thinking it's over and wanted to show everyone he had ace jack of clubs for unknown reasons. Alfredo has 2 9s, decides to call. They're very deep. Right. They all have 10K. They like have 100 blinds each. It's a tournament. The flop is Jack 9 deuce.
And Vicente's hand is face up the whole time.
With 2 spades. Alfredo bets super small. He bets like 200 into a pot of 600.
Yeah.
Interestingly, Vicente decides to raise with his exposed hand. He is top, but Okay.
Yeah.
So he makes it 600. Alfredo clicks it back effectively to 1200. And Vicente calls.
Yep.
This is not,
It's
we
not
don't
a,
recommend
It's
this,
not a good idea.
this play. The turn is another jack. That's an interesting card.
Yeah.
It's a bet of, is it 1,000 or 2,000? I think it's 1,000 on
Yeah.
the turn. 1,000, and Vicente only calls this time.
Yeah.
The river is a deuce. Now, so that's sort of really unlucky for Alfredo. He had 9s full of jacks, and now jacks just jumped ahead of him.
And guess who can see it? Both players.
Right.
Alfredo can see that was what happened.
He also knows, oh, this guy's probably never going to fold. So he checks. Vicente bets, which is a terrible decision.
He bets 1,000.
But still a terrible
8,000.
decision. The guy can see your hand. What good is going to come of this? Well, I guess Alfredo could decide to move in like he does for 4,000 effective.
Knowing that he's behind and the other guy has top full house.
And Vicente calls relatively quickly, and here we are.
It's the weirdest hand ever played.
It may be the worst played hand we've ever done, although we've done a few other that are good candidates.
This is very bad.
Here we go. Heavy on the mustard, please. We're doing 2 comments, by the way.
Okay.
Says, pretty sure Alfredo still thought he had the best hand on the river and was moving in for value, which actually a bunch of people wrote something like this.
That makes the most sense.
It does.
I mean, our theory was that it was entitlement tilt or something. I mean, at the same time, it's actually a pretty good representation of a better hand than Jack's full here.
You just have to get the guy to actually fold.
Right. The problem is we've seen the actions that Vicente has taken so far, and that's not a guy who's thinking enough to say, oh, you're repping Jack 9 or quad deuces.
Yeah.
So it's not a good move against Vicente. This is a better explanation, actually.
The thing is this. It's possible that the hand was edited in a particular way, but like he moves in. When the call happens, Alfredo says, you win, you win. Like he says it right away. It isn't like he turns his hand over proudly and is confused.
Is that true?
Yeah, he says, you got it, basically. So maybe Alfredo moved in and then realized afterward that he screwed up. It is, I guess, possible. But I don't really think so. I think he somehow turned his hand into a bluff. We can't know. We're not in his head.
Yeah.
You guys could be right on that one. Also, Daboonson says...
That's a cool name.
Yes, it is. If Alfredo had a jack in his hand, wouldn't he have just folded, excuse me, pre-flop, since he was dominated by Vicente's ace-jack? So really the only value hand that Alfredo can actually rep on the river is quad deuces.
I think he could call with any hand. He could call with any 2 cards.
He should call with any 2.
They're super deep. It's not about being dominated. Doesn't matter when you can see the other guy's cards.
Right.
You can call with every single hand and play it perfectly. It's a great spot. It doesn't matter what you have.
Have deuce 7. It doesn't matter.
So I really think Alfredo can have all the hands.
Agree 100%.
Yeah.